what can GLAM do? And now it's the question, how can you can someone access all the characterization factor files? And as Olivier said, it was my task then to bring everything together. And at the moment we have GLAM beta version 1.0.10 ready. So what is GLAM at the moment? It's a folder on Box which has many different Excel files, and it's now my task to explain you a bit what are these Excel files. Of course, the final idea is to have it implemented in software, but there's many steps missing before we actually get into the software. So this is how the results that we currently have. So if you now access this Box folder, what you can see is that we have one folder for each area of protection here: ecosystem quality, human health, socioeconomic assets. And then you can also see that there is a change log, so describing what has happened between the versions. Then there's a GLAM matching file. I will come back to this in a minute. And then there's also the weighting factors that Marco just has presented. They're available there. So inside each of these areas of protection, you can find an Excel sheet for each of the impact categories. And now I'm going to tell you what can you find inside these Excel sheets. So Olivier, if you go to the next slide, please.
Yeah, that
we come back okay, we can
I can go there. I mean,
I think it's better in the end, because otherwise no one will know what the research and the practitioner version is. So
okay. I will correct it at the end. Okay.
Yes. So if you open these files, you will see lots of different Excel sheets, and also due to time constraints, I think for me the two most important sheets for you is this LCI methods CF and LCI methods CF GLAM. So what is LCI methods CF? This is what I tend to call the research version. So what we have in there is all the characterization factors that have been submitted, and I put them in a standardized format so that I can have them in an Excel sheet, and that we can recognize things. So this is how it looks. We have, for example, the original flow name. So this is really the flow name like it has been submitted by the model developers. Then we have maybe a class number if it has been there, maybe a location and its name, the characterization factor itself, the unit, was there some uncertainty reported, and then flow class 0 to flow class 2, which is the compartment. Then, for example, for ecosystem quality, what species are covered, which realm. Then the mathematical approach, is it like an average characterization factor, is it marginal? And then there's something which is called scenario. So this is a bit where I put in mixed information. So this is more like we can also call it specification of, is it model for a specific case, for example, here original weighting land use, but in toxicity, for example, it would be like cancer and non-cancer. And then the CF derivation, in this case, it's original because we're in the research version. And it's the method type, are we at damage level or midpoint level, and also the LCI method name. And as I said, it's all the original names, and this also means that we can have several characterization factors per flow name, location, and the flow class. This is what you see here, because we can have combinations of different scenarios or species. So this is really combining everything that has been submitted. And to make this a bit more user-friendly, we can go to the next slide. Then I created this so-called Partitioner version, which you can find in the Excel sheet LCI methods CF GLAM. So it's also an Excel sheet. It has many of the columns are the same, but now the first big difference is, since the naming nomenclature before was not harmonized, we decided to match the flow names and the compartment names with the EF list nomenclature. So in this case, it's then really standardized how we call things between impact categories and between areas of protection. And in this case, for example, here you can see now the flow name is agriculture, and then there has been a matching towards the name of the EF list. And in this case, there has been a matching assumed. So what do I do by matching assumed? We don't have exactly the same, we didn't have exactly the same flow name before, but we can assume a matching. And then there's also clear matching, which means it was more like a syntax thing, so that we see if there's maybe a comma or a point or underscore or something like this. And then we have done the same for the compartment. And in this case, there was no compartment matching necessary, as the names for land use were already the same. They're already harmonized with the EF list. And then also I applied some filters, because before I said there is several characterization factors per flow name and flow class combination. So in this case, we decided then to filter for average characterization factors. So the marginal ones are out, and then only one scenario. And how the filters are applied, I always went back to the task forces to talk with them what would be the one that you would include into the Partitioner version. Yes, so this is the Partitioner version. Next slide, please. Yes, and Olivier, and we had in the beginning, it was mentioned that we have spatially differentiated characterization factors, and for this Excel format, we decided that we will only include country or global level characterization factors. And which countries are covered, you can find in this LCA method location sheet. And what you see with this is that native scale characterization factors, if they're more spatially detailed than the country file, they're not included here. But if this is applicable, that these native scale characterization factors exist, you can get the link to it, and you could download them, and then you could kind of use the structure of the research version to use them. So this just as a disclaimer. And then we can go back to the overview of the characterization factors. So what do we have in there?
Sorry, here?
Yes. So this is the overview of each impact category. How many characterization factors do we have in the research version, and how many unique flows do they cover? So we see that especially for freshwater ecotoxicity and land use, it's a lot of characterization factors. So it's only for one category, it's already over 300,000. And as Olivier mentioned, it's over 5,000 flows, for example, for ecotoxicity. So that's 5,749 flows here.
Sorry.
Do you also have the overview of what goes into the research version afterwards?
Perhaps I can just say there is also for the socioeconomic assets, we have these flows here that we have. Okay, so you go back to here, the matching.
Yes, and now I said that we have done a matching towards the EF nomenclature, and you can find the matching that we have done in this GLAM matching beta version 1_01 file. So this is really the file which makes the transition between the researcher's version and the practitioner's version. And I would like really to point out that the matching that has been done was always like, there was a proposed matching, and I was always checked with the model developers itself if this matching is appropriate or not. So I think this is really a unique case for GLAM, that really there was a dialogue between the implementation phase and the matching phase. And then whenever you look into this sheet, there's something called flow and something called compartment. In the flow, you will find the flow matching, and in the comp, you will find the compartment matching. And then now, if someone will really dig into it, then someone will ask maybe why is there also a compartment in these flow sheets? And this is because I sometimes have to add compartments just because of the flow matching. So this is more really for me for coding reasons to have it in there. And this is why there is this comp overview. So there you can really see all the compartments that are covered and how has the matching been done. And maybe also has there been just a compartment calculated, for example, an emission to air unspecified, so that this was just added. So this is all transparent here. And also the numbers of the characterization factors. If you go to this stat sheet, you can also find the most updated numbers of how many characterization factors are there. Next slide, please. And then I also got the question, now we matched it with the EF list. How can I now apply this? How can I proceed with this? The good news is there has been some work done by the Global Lifecycle Assessment Data Access Working Group, and they have published a lot of mapping files from the EF list to other inventories. So this is why the EF list nomenclature is a really good starting point. And if you then use these mapping files, you can, for example, map it to ecoinvent. So this is why it was a really good basis for doing this naming harmonization. Yes, I think that's what I have to say about
Okay, so I think we'll move directly to the normalization, Martin.
Yes. So now I said we can use it, and then Alexis Llorenç was responsible for creating a normalization inventory. He also had different flow names, but then we also used these mapping files to get to a mapping. And what I then could do is I could apply the characterization factors to the normalization inventory to get an idea what is the range of the global impact. And these are the results that I'm having at the moment here for ecosystem quality, human health, and socioeconomic assets. And then also in blue, you can find kind of the average per year, and also for DALIs and DALI days per person in year. And this was then used to compare it. And I mean, we can discuss for hours probably about these results, but I would say for now, they appear reasonable. And also if I can only speak for ecosystem quality and interpretation, if I look at terrestrial climate change, that's higher than terrestrial land use. That is something what I would have expected. So we can see, at least from if we compare them between each other in a relative comparison, these results seem to be reasonable. And it also shows we can use it for testing and we get results.
Yeah. But perhaps one comment on that to say that what is interesting here to be at the damage level when we arrive here is we have a sort of quality check also with the amount total of, for example, DALI we have overall. And here we are around 20 DALI days or days per person per year lost. And I think in the survey, Marco, you were going from like 5 to 50 DALIs or something like that. I mean, we are close, in fact, to the average situation. That it's a bit by chance in a sense that it's so close. But it's interesting to see that the order of magnitude. The PDF are a bit high here, 0.5, but the uncertainty is also relatively high. So we have to be careful here. Our recommendation, and I will show for the RISE case study how to do that, is really to look at these results, in fact, in log scale. And what is interesting when we look at these results is some are around 10 minus 1, like here the climate change, fresh water, or the marine here, the marine eutrophication and freshwater eutrophication. And there are 2 orders of magnitude or more higher than in this present case here, the terrestrial, for example, ecotoxicity, or the terrestrial climate change. So that's interesting because that gives us a sort of weighting in orders of magnitude. That's why we should look at these results in log scale, in priority, in that case. Okay. Now we have a RISE case study. Martin, you could perhaps explain, and I will provide 2 graphs in addition.
Yes, so now we have seen the testing on the global scale, but then also our idea was to more test it on a product level, and there has already been a RISE case study designed in the GLAM phase 2. So it was the idea to follow up on this, and then we had one. This was the starting point. But this one was made in EcoInvent 2. So now we decided to move it to EcoInvent 3. So this was done by Llorenç here. So thanks a lot for this. And what we got with this is a new inventory generated in Cima Pro. And then we got all the inventory, elementary flows out of this. And then it was really good to see that this GLAD matching file that I just presented, which are available, was really useful for doing this, so the matching could be performed with this. And then we used the characterization factors from the GLAM beta version to do the testing. And then one thing, because now we've seen it's EcoInvent, but there is I would call them more novel impact categories, and they did when there was no inventory value available, they provided some testing results on their own. But it's also showing that yes, we can also get to impacts for these categories.
So perhaps to back up, not every knows what the RISE case study is. It's a case study which has been already used for evaluating or presenting our results from the Valencia 2016 and 2018 workshops. And we've continued to elaborate it, sometime adding perhaps a microplastic flow where not before, so we've added that. And the functional unit is 1 kilo rice consumed in different country, in Switzerland, and here Switzerland, the production is done in US, in China with both production and consumption in China, and in India where we have in fact burning or the cooking is happening inside the house with wood cooking in that case. I think the China is with gas and the Swiss is with electricity or in these scenarios. So that was the basis for this comparison. And it's a nice case study to illustrate some of the impact here. Go ahead.
Yes, and then these are the results that we get. So it's, as I said, it's nicely to see that it's also working, that we can apply GLAM to eco-invent. This was for me the first outcome that I took out of this RISE case study testing. And here we now see the results. And now it's also a question we can discuss a lot about the results. So it's really the question for me, where do we go into detail? But one thing that I would like to point out is when we talk about ecosystem quality, that it's when we do this comparison, that we have different realms. So this is where I really sorted them here by freshwater, terrestrial, and marine. So because then if we have this global PDF unit, it refers to the fraction of the species in the freshwater realm and the terrestrial realm and in the marine realm. So also be careful here, what am I comparing? But in general, if we have all these, since we're on endpoint level, we can do inside ecosystem quality. If I now talk about water consumption and eutrophication, both for freshwater, I can really do a cross comparison. I can really look at, I have 10 to the power of minus 12 and I have 10 to the power of minus 14. And then I can really check, this one is 2 orders of magnitude higher than the other one. And we can also have this for human health DALI, and we can have it also for the socioeconomic assets. So this is really nice to see. And of course, if we would now like to understand why are some values maybe popping out a bit higher, I can, for example, speak about the water consumption. So why is this so high for Switzerland? So this is because if we go back to the characterization factor, we have the tendency that the smaller the basins in the country are, the higher the characterization factor is. So Switzerland has smaller water basins than China and India. So this is why the characterization factor there is a bit higher. So there is then always a method explanation behind it. Why is it like this? But since I also, since updating is still in progress, I didn't have really the time to dig into all of the results, but there is, in most of the cases I've seen for now, when things pop out, that there's a really good explanation for it. Why is it like this?
Okay.
Yes, and just this to emphasize this again, since we're an endpoint damage level, we can really do this cross comparison. So I can, for example, inside one country for human health, I can just sort them and then I can do my ranking and I can start any cross comparison between the impact categories. But I can also then, if I then would like to compare Switzerland and China with each other and between different impact categories, since it's the same unit, I can also start doing this cross comparison. So when being in the same unit for all of the inside one area of protection, this has some really nice advantages when trying to figure out where's my impact coming from and what would I like to compare with each other. And then we can, of course, do some aggregation. So we can do a summing. Since it's the same units, we can simply aggregate all the impact categories by aggregate them by summing them. But then it's a bit special for ecosystem quality. Here we have 3 realms, and we can also sum them inside one realm, and then we get one result for freshwater, terrestrial, and marine. And here the recommendation from the ecosystem quality task force is actually to keep them at this level and not to do any further aggregation, so that we're really comparing, looking at terrestrial, freshwater, and marine individual. I think that also makes sense if we think about some biodiversity targets or aims or things like this, so they might not behave in the same way. And this is also what we see here in the results for freshwater and terrestrial. Next slide. But of course, since Olivier mentioned, we can go to a single score and we can do some further aggregation. So we have now our normalization values. So we could get to normalized results. And then, there were several weighting options presented. So we can apply the weighting and then we could get here to a final single score. But of course, as Olivier said, we can also normalize the individual impact categories and then do a weighting between the areas of protection. So we have plenty of options in either getting to something aggregated or really tracing back where is it coming from and looking at the individual impact categories. Yes.
Okay.
This was a good summary of where can you find the data and showing that, yes, we can apply them and what are preliminary results and that they make sense. And now it's also time for me to dig a bit into and find some explanations of what we see.
I come back in this question a bit of midpoint, endpoint. What is really important is that all results are provided separately here for different categories. For the individual category results, and you can present results like what would be a usual midpoint level, as here I put as a percentage of the highest scenario in that case. You could possibly take a substance, a kilo SO2, something like that, but as I say, that would be much more, if you like, we could calculate an average, for example, impact of kilo SO2 global, and we've done that to have an unspecified value, which is the average. But this average doesn't exist in practice. It's a virtual average. So it makes less sense to arrive to a kilo substance equivalent instead of directly, in fact, using here the endpoint, which uses the species richness, which is absolutely crucial because if you have an emission in the Sahara Desert, and we had that for acidification, the first results I've seen from master students here at DTU 4 or 5 years ago, where we were seeing that the most important emission were also happening in Sahara because we were not considering how many species are there. And if we don't include the richness in many of the ecosystem quality, we are really in trouble not to do that. So it could be misleading, I would say, not to use what is here the endpoint in that case. The other category where I have not for climate change, we have a real midpoint because all emissions contribute to radiation, and then the subsequent effects are linked to that. But it's nearly you need, when we spatialize the things, you need to be really have a global impact to do that. Otherwise, in fact, the impact are really specific to the region. And as I said, it depends on the population there. It depends on the species richness. So we in a sense, it doesn't make sense to go to too early midpoints here. What we could provide is perhaps some of the midpoint. I take, for example, for the human toxicity, we can provide the cancer, non-cancer, and we have now added the developmental reproductive toxicity because there is enough data. There are more than 6,000 substance data to provide that, which was really interesting here. I was surprised by that. And there we could provide some results a bit earlier in the chain. But as I say, for many of these, it's just a fixed factor. It's just 2.5 years or 2.4 years for the of life lost per cases for the non-cancer. It's 11.5 for the cancer, and it's like 40 for the developmental toxicity because it's much younger people, or it affects the early life in that case. So I think in the technical presentation that gave you an overview of what we can do. Now, what is important is if you look at these sort of results, you would consider that all these categories are equal. But we can see that and here we really recommend to look at the endpoint or damage results in log scale when we take the absolute, I mean the absolute value and not relative. We see that, for example, the climate change terrestrial here is substantially lower than other type of impact here. And that's really to put that into perspective, I would say, and then we can analyze why it is the case. We have the same for human tox, where ionizing radiation is always 2 to 3 orders of magnitude. So if you take in percentage, it looks, I mean, a scenario, and often scenario are different than others. It doesn't follow the scenario ranking. But here you can still look at which scenario. You can see that in most cases, the China and India are higher, but we have this exception here with the water in Switzerland, where that's something we need to discuss, Martin, here. So I'll go now to the shareholder, and we're launching now the stakeholder consultation. And Llorenç, I've put here a copy of the form, which will be online today. I'll let you conclude here and open the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Olivier. Thanks all presenters for a great session. It was really interesting and very informative, and actually I've seen the chat is on fire, so I've been trying also to capture your attention to maybe try and answer some of the questions in the chat, as we might not have the time for all of them now. But first, before we go into the questions and answer session, I would like to take a minute to point at the feedback form that Olivier just mentioned. You've been hearing about the progress, and now we want to hear more from you. Thanks again for some of the comments already provided in the chat, but please, we need your input, and we have prepared the feedback form, which I think my colleagues will be now sharing in the chat, so they will be sharing that other link. Martin, by the way, I think the link for the characterization factor files, it was on the screen, but people didn't have the time to copy it, so if you could also share that link, that would be great. So we have a link to a form that will be shared in the chat for you to provide feedback on any aspect of the method, of the GLAM method as it was presented today, for specific impact categories, for the structure, for the consultation process, etc. So there's a space to provide that feedback, and we really need it. You don't need to answer all the questions in the feedback form, so you can focus on those that you're most interested. And of course, if you want to answer on all of them, that would be fantastic as well. I think we've suggested a deadline by the 22nd of September, so we can then also be providing some answers and some responses to this feedback by mid-October. And just once more, I want to greatly appreciate the time that you've provided, that you will provide as well with a feedback form. I insist once more, we really need your feedback. And having said that, we have a few questions, and Olivier, I've been noting them. So I don't know if you would like me to read some of these questions, or would you prefer to just pick from the ones that you think need to be addressed now?
No, go ahead, because I didn't have time to really look at the chat. So yes, we will share the slide, of course, and we could, in fact, Martin, could we put them directly on the same link as I think
we can. I mean, I don't know. We'll see what's best. I think we can probably keep the link to the characterization factors. We can also put the slides in the LifeCycle Initiative website. But indeed, I mean, the important answer now is this will be shared very soon. And also the half recording, and apologies, as I forgot to mention that we had to start the recording and then we didn't start in the beginning. So we only have the recording for the second half, but we will also provide some of the kind of the written report of the first half of the session today. So I think that actually already covers a few questions. Olivier, would you like to talk about the implementation and stewardship before we go into some of the other questions, or?
Yes, correct. So as I said, for the implementation, to make it really broadly available, we needed to have it in software. That's what we saw already for the Valencia workshop and the previous work. We have been in contact, in particular, with the CIMA Pro developer who were very helpful to make comment and to improve the situation. And because also that Martin has really made it compatible with EF, I think it will really help to implement it. But there is still it takes a bit of time. So as we say, between October, it will probably take until March, and then it will be in the next probably CMAPRO version. We are open also to support, of course, Gabi, OpenLCA, Brightway, or other I would say perhaps non-specific LCA software who are interested to take it. Many of the underlying methods are also useful, not only in our case, we have the UStock software. Now it's doing product, can do it in a compatible way also with safe and sustainable by design community. And we start serving also multiple community through the GLAM that we have here. Now, stewardship, I would say there. I mean, first we will do some capacity building. I think that's to be organized in 2025. I expect first that when it's available on LCA software, we'll get also a lot of feedback. And we might perhaps reopen a small, feedback that we have feedback form that to do that. And then for stewardship, we will define criteria. And I would say like that, if the method is improved by things which were foreseen, and I could see the number of substances, I gave this example before, that will be increased because that is the request of or the need for agency like ADEME, or I think the European community also need that, because we have 80,000 chemicals which are used in our products nowadays. So we need to cover that. And especially for new alternatives, we need to cover that. So these are things which were foreseen. I mean, that was a recommendation from the Valencia workshop. In that case, we will convene just a specific workshop to say, okay, this is how it has been developed, and we don't need to restart a consensus process from the start. Or having some improvement in the category which were foreseen where we didn't have time to do it, we will move ahead and have then a sort of expert workshop. If it's an entirely new impact category, then we should convene a workshop at the start with an invitation, open invitation, as we did at the start of this process. And we will then have a sort of specific category-specific consensus. I don't expect the method to change, if you like. I know the time it takes to develop new category and so on. So it will be incremental improvement in the, I would say, the coming years, and correction. I mean, correction will be directly implemented and documented so that people can know what has been corrected. And I foresee that there will be a stewardship committee, perhaps with also newer scientists or younger scientists, who then could I would say take over the need or the work on that in the future. Okay. Other question you would like to emphasize, Llorenç?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Olivier. So I see there's already been some answers as well to Milá Tamayao, who was asking about the relationship with other working policy instruments like PEF and Ecovalis. So I see Tim already provided some initial answers for ecosystem services, but essentially she was looking into novel aspects as well. So Milá was asking about new things that are covered in GLAM, but are currently not being considered in existing LCA frameworks like the PEF specifically.
So I would say we've been in relatively close interaction with PEF, and also in contact with US EPA. I think Jane Baer was on the call I saw, or or perhaps is still on the call.
Cheers.
Here. And we've been, I would say, relying in both directions. I can say that on human toxicity, for example, we've been analyzing databases which are developed within USEPA, for example, adding, in fact, the ECHA data, or unless they were already included there. Many of the development in ecosystem quality, as Tim was mentioning, have been done in interaction with the EF, and we were discussing just on Monday with what could be taken for the PEF for the EF from what we have done and where we can also. So many of the midpoint of the PEF, in fact, have common impact pathway, I would say, development with our work, which is here. But the PEF has chosen at the in the end and might consider moving towards also or using some damage information. I think what we are providing here, in addition to new modeling, is this information that how important are certain category to other based on natural science and not just based on arbitrary weighting or expert weighting in that case. Then we can also use that with expert weighting afterwards. Then category like nutrition or physical exercise, they might be in fact taken up later also there. They're touching. I found we've been very stupid in a sense with our LCA development. We started with the environmental impact of chemical and neglected the use phase of the chemical. And an LCA should have the use phase of the chemical included. And in fact, we are much better. We are in a much better place to model the use phase because we know the use of the product. Whereas in risk assessment, one chemical, and usually it's per chemical, is used in hundreds of products, and it's very hard to do. So the LCA, in fact, the right tool for some of the SSBD framework for providing the talks. Okay, other question, Martin, you want to add something?
Yes, I would like to add. I mean, I haven't really digged into this, but we have a lot of flows which are new, where we couldn't do any link to the environmental footprint list. So all of these flows are in the matching. They're listed as new. So you can see kind of that there's overlap to existing inventory impact methods. What flows are they covering? But we see that we go a lot beyond. So if you check the statistics, which is in a file, you can really see how many new flows do we have. So there you can already see that, yes, there is overlap, but there's also differences just already from what is covered inside each impact category.
Excellent. I mean, according to my clock, we really have like 1 minute left. But I think, well, first, there would be maybe a couple of questions. Mauro Cordella from the European Commission asked around the weighting. So that's maybe more for Cecilia and Marco. He asked how ranges are defined, calculated. And I imagine that replies from survey were far more diverging than what we see in the results. That was one question. And then he had another one during the presentation of the characterization factors on what the expected variation between the two different versions of the characterization factors. So that might be more for Martin or Olivier. I would probably finish with this question, although I also realized Maria Bystricki or Bistricki, I'm not sure how to pronounce your surname, apologies. In addition to asking for the presentation, she was also asking about the process of the publication of all the different methodological concepts. So there's these two more kind of questions on the different factors, that weighting and normalization from Mauro Cordella. And then this one about the publication process by Maria, and then I think we'll have to wrap it up.
Yeah, perhaps I'll take rapidly the publication process. We have a series of 5 papers we are working on. Some are very close to final, especially on ecosystem quality. We're still working a bit more on human health. I think we will put at least at the launch, we could already perhaps put some version now on the link documenting what is there. But in fact, most of the methodology, in fact, have been documented in detail via category-specific publication. So now we're adding 5 publications which put everything together with a sort of summary and where to find the information on each category. Marco, can you perhaps go with the weighting question? Oh, I'm not sure if Marco is here, or Cecilia. Yeah, Cecilia, go ahead.
Yeah, if Marco's not here as well to answer, I put it in the chat, the actual paper for the weighting factors, so you can see the ranges and the responses, and the variation is actually included in the paper and the supplementary materials. And you're right, there is a difference and variation in the responses, and we've tried to document that. And obviously, the representativeness for the global population is limited to the representativeness of the people who responded to the survey. But I think you'll find all that documentation in that paper, which has just recently been published. I hope that helps.
And Martin, could you go for the last question of Mauro?
Yes, I mean that's at some point it's we made a choice in what factors to include. That's this discussion, for example, if you use marginal or average characterization factors. So yes, it's kind of a difference, but I see also the research version more as Olivier mentioned, like in the other one you can see the cancer and you can see the non-cancer, that this is more the version. If you see some interest in aspects and you would like to dig deeper into it, then you can kind of start using the research version. So it's hard for me to answer this question since they're designed for different purposes. So yes, I would expect different outcomes depending on what level of detail you're looking with the research version.
Excellent. I mean, some people have started leaving, well, many actually, because we said that we would finish at past, and it's over past. So I would close it here. We still have a few questions pending, but we'll try and address those in the best way. I'm also wondering, Olivier, I think we probably should update the links to each one of the papers on the website. So maybe that's a quick exercise that we can do as well to facilitate the dissemination of all of these scientific publications, some of which have already been published through the process, and as Olivier was saying, we have a few others forthcoming. But if there's nothing else, of course, now I'll hand it over back to you, Olivier, if you want to give it a close. But again, just from our perspective, thanks everybody for their participation, their very active participation, and certainly for the contribution of the hundreds of scientists who have made possible the progress so far. So Olivier, over to you for a closure.
I'll say, please look at what is there. I know it's not easily implemented in software, but look and provide your feedback. We will cherish that, and we've always cherished, and these are important inputs for us. So please use the feedback form and inform us. We need it, and we're looking forward to seeing people using it and getting additional feedback. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks very much. Have a great day, everyone.